Hey you, how are you doing today? I don't know if you ever got a nickname at any stage in your life by any group of people. So we all have our given names, right? I can't say I quite had a nickname growing up, but I had names people called me. In fact, if I remember very well, one of the first names that I got called, aside the name my parents gave me, one of the nicknames I got was not a nice one. It had something to do with my weight. It was a name coined for people who were very chubby. You can tell I was a chubby baby, right? So it was one of those names that those wicked students would give to somebody, a colleague that they thought was chubby. I didn't like it, of course. And now that I think about it, I had my way of shying away from the people who call me by names I didn't like. And I had a way of being attracted to people who respected me, even in my understanding of what respect should be at that age. I now um, participated and joined groups of activities where my weight was not an issue. And so you can imagine that I was not the sports kid. I was not the kid in any group of people playing tente or playing, in any physically oriented activity. However, I had my clique. Okay, there were the nerds, there were the people who, we would talk about what novels we were reading that week. We will talk about the new words the English teacher was dishing. And in those groups, I was doing well and I was being hailed. And so those are the places I found myself attracted to. I'm thinking about that. I hope you do know that as you journey, as you grow, there are associations you make. And what happens when you get into a new group, into a new association, is that in the first few days, let's say it's a cohort of people you are working with, it's a team or a group of people, or you are in school and these are the new people that you have to work with, or at work, whenever you get into a new community, even in church, the first few months, the first few encounters, what people do is that they read you, right? They make judgments of you based on how you react, based on your expressions, based on your responses, and they classify you. We all do it. They classify you. But what is worse than classifying is that they give you a name, they put you in a mode. And this mode is like, when you want people who can do this, this is the person to call. When you want people who can behave in this certain matter, if you want people that can go out and speak for us, these are the people to go with. If you want people who can, cook and take care of stuff, these are the group of people to go with. And so, apart from classifying people, what we do is that we put some name. I hope you know a name is an identifier. And so we identify people, and in our heads, this person fits this mold. And there is nothing wrong with that. We all need it. It's part of our mechanism to help us compartmentalize things and to help us think clearly. Now, here is where the problem is. Some people don't just keep that classification to themselves. In the name of friendships, they begin to speak that classification out to you. They begin to say, you are quiet, you are conserved, you don't do this kind of thing. This is not the kind of thing that you would do. And that is okay until and unless it's not what you understand as who you are. It's okay if you tell me that and what you have just told me matches exactly my identity of myself. But what if when you tell me that that's not exactly what I think of myself, and even if I have been exhibiting a different character in my head, in my mind, what I think about myself, I have a different identity than what you have said. And so my solution to this is, you may not be able to correct people. It's okay to hear, because what you are hearing is telling you what people are reading, especially when you hear it from one or two other people. Okay? but you need to maintain some relative deafness. What that means is that you hear what they say, but because it does not correlate with what you believe, and in this case what you should believe is what you know your maker has told you about yourself. And so just like people have their own case of your definition on who you are, you should also have a dossier on the definition of what God has told you about who you are. And so in daily life, when people come out and they tell you things and they say, this is not what I think you would do. In fact, I have friends till today that say, no, you won't do well in that. From what I know about you, I don't think those are your strengths. This is what I think about your strength. And it's okay until it does not align with what I believe I am supposed to do. And so if you walk up to me as a friend and you tell me, oh, you don't think I can be good in this area. If it's not an area I want to be good in, that's fine. But if it's an area that is necessary for what I want to achieve, I am going to be relatively deaf. It's when I start responding to you and say, no, I think I can do it. That's when I have heard you. I didn't hear you. And if not for anything, to make sure that I didn't hear you, I must delve into that area. I must go and do something in that area. I have friends who told me, you are not cut out for business. I'm like, me? Do you know me? Have you met me? I think you are talking to the wrong person. And just to be clear, just to be sure, oh, am I doing business? Oh, am I excelling at it? You don't even know the half of me. And so it's not bad for people to have their classifications. I have my thoughts about you. I have what I think about what you would do. If I have a proposition, if I have somebody to help, there are people in my mind I think will be good for it. There are people in my mind that I am not sure whether this is what they are playing at yet. And so this is the deal. Have that dossier of what God says about you. And it's important that you go back to Him regularly to download that. He has told you about yourself before. I hope you have it written down. I hope you can even make a habit of just writing, but that's another video. But if you have it down and you know that these are the kind of things you do, these are the kind of things you can do based on who you understand yourself to be, based on what you heard from your maker as regards who you are. If you have that, you need to remind yourself of it. So you have to go back to where it is written, and you have to go back to where you wrote what He said to you. And then in daily life and in conversations, you are going to hear feedback, because what you hear from people is feedback. Okay, that's feedback. People are going to tell you their impression of you, especially people who are close to you. They are the people who have your ears anyway, hopefully. And when they tell you that, what that is feedback. But the deafness I'm talking about is that you must be careful that you do not act based on what they have said. You take what they have said and you compare it to what He said concerning you. When you make that comparison, then you now need to tell yourself, does it look alike? If it looks alike, that is good. You see why you have not heard until it aligns. But if you place it side by side and it does not say the same thing, if after all you know God says about you, you go out and your friends think that you are a no-gooder, that you don't do well, that you are not going to perfect, and they love you enough to be able to give you that feedback, you need to go back and you need to start aligning to what you know your maker has said about you. You need to go back to that and you need to continue reworking yourself. And the only reason why you need to hear feedback from anybody is to know, have you started seeing what he saw? And until they start to see what he saw, you don't listen to that. And even when they start to see what he saw, you are listening to it based on its alignment to what you know to be true. That's the way this whole identity thing works, because our acquaintances are always going to keep us in the box that they have already classified us to be. It will be very difficult for your siblings, for your friends in way back primary school, it may be very difficult for them to see you in your renewed identity. I can imagine somebody from school seeing me now, if they can recognize me. In fact, that's what happens most of the time. I'm not talking about school, university, but school way back, like maybe primary. Most of the people, I can't recognize them and they can't recognize me. But guess what? If I wanted to get them to recognize me, I may have to remind them of the name that they used to call me. And then what happens when recognition hits? You're like, oh my God, you don't look anything. Have you seen any of those late boomers that looked very, unattractive in school, and now some of them are looking like the bomb, and you are trying hard to fix? It's because that identity you had, it's your identity. And do you know what some people do? In fact, most people do it. They try, in order to establish familiarity, they try to bring you back to the identity they know. It's like they have a placeholder, and this is where you fit in. And in order to relate to you, they need to bring you back down into that placeholder. Now, the job of unveiling your identity is yours. It's you to correct people. It's you to tell people, what are you talking about? Me, I can do it. Okay? It's you to give people an impression as nicely as you can. The toughest ones to correct are the identity that your parents or in fact, parents even know, because every parent is waiting and watching for their child to evolve, right? But sometimes siblings who know you as, I can remember when one of my brothers told me that, please don't call me by that. This is my name. As in, we had a pet name for him, and that name signified a young boy. You know how you have Junior at home and you call them Junior. And so one of those days, I still kept on calling him by that old name, and he kept on correcting me and says, you see this, you see the problem? You need to call me, this is my name. And it took some working, but I corrected myself, and eventually I started addressing him by his given name and not the joke name we used to call it. It may require some work, but you see this thing where you don't want confrontation, you are comfortable, you don't want wahala, and people are calling you by an identity that is not yours. You see this thing where people just generally agree. I know a lady that came into class one time, and she used to wear very heavy goggles. But when she came to class, we already had an IJ. And so when she introduced herself as IJ, we were like, oh no, we already have an IJ. And somebody said, oh, IJ Goggles. I'm telling you, the name stuck. And she became IJ Goggles. There was nothing she could do. And I think she relaxed a lot, because after a while, you say, IJ Goggles, hey, it's Goggles. And that became her name. And she remained and retained that name for a long time. I know that if I should see IJ Goggles today, whether she's wearing goggles or not, if I can recognize her, I'm going to call her IJ Goggles. And that's what I'm saying. You need to correct the identity that people may have gotten comfortable calling you, because these things follow. After a while, these things stick. They kind of determine what can come your way, what cannot come your way. They kind of put a limiting lid on you and prevent you from going out like you should. In fact, go a step further and pick names. Pick whether nicknames or whatever. Pick identities. Conform to those identities, right? But then insist that people see you with those identities. Now that's the tough one, because you can't force us to call you what we don't see. And so the work first is on you to start exhibiting those tendencies, but also in helping us to leave the old identity we have come to know you with. There's this beautiful thing that happened in the Bible. I think it was with John the Baptist, and then he was in the wilderness and he was doing his thing, and people came and said, "Hey, guy, who are you?" I don't think he was very fast in responding with that with the answer, because they said, "Okay, you're Elijah," and the guy said, "No, I am not Elijah." And he said, "Okay, you must be the prophet." And he said, "No, I'm not the prophet." And even though, from my understanding, Elijah was not quite sure of what he was, because eventually he said, "I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness." That's not a concise, it's a mouthful. How do we call you? Hey, the one crying in the wilderness. We want, a concise, what are you, an engineer, banker, lawyer? Do you understand? And so, in as much as he was not sure of what exactly his name was, he kept on insisting that, "Guys, that's not my name." And so the work is on you. As you enter a new community, as you enter a new job, as you get in for a conference, don't allow them call you the shy one. That used to be me. So don't allow you. I have a lot of friends who now insist that I am shy, and then when they hear me talk, because I don't think originally I'm a shy person. I am just shy in some places and not in all places. So, and I have a lot of friends who, even though they know that I am, exerting myself in different areas, whenever they see me, in their minds and in their expressions, they say that. And even if that is their impression, I do not agree that you say it to me. And so when they say the shy one, I say, "Who? Me? Let's get into a conference and let's see who you." Do you understand? I make it a point to correct that every time. And you know what that forces me to do? When I now make that response, in that particular conversation, we have an icebreaker, we have something to talk about. I am now then forced, because on a normal day, I will just open my tablet and I will, be reading while other people are chatting and networking and having a good time. But the moment I now correct you, what will happen is that I am paying attention in that conversation, in that encounter, to live up to the identity that I call myself. There are some identities we think are fantastic or are funny, and people label us as such, and we don't mind. But they are limiting, they are inhibiting, they stop us from achieving what we should achieve. Because can you imagine that when I wanted to go into business, I was thinking to myself that, everybody sees me, and in their minds, no, it's written somewhere in my forehead, cannot do a business. Until tomorrow, there are people who don't know about it, and when I talk to them, they are like, "You don't look cut out." And depending on how big you are, I make it a point to say, "I'm a businesswoman." I don't know what your impression of a businesswoman, maybe somebody in the market carrying bell, but hello, there is something called entrepreneurship, right? I have the capacity, I am a profitable one, I can, I do all of these things. And I take it upon myself to, in every conversation, correct, because it matters. It matters that you can see me and something in your mind can tell you that I thought that this was not what she could, but she's doing it. She said so herself. Sometimes you think it's not upon you to speak for yourself. It's you. No one is going to speak for you. There's a reason God has given you a mouth. Okay? So it's you who gets to speak for yourself. And the last thing I want to say on this video is be conscious about the identities that you too yourself pick up. There are some that people didn't give you, but you just thought it was a fancy thing and you decided to pick it up because it is trendy, or because it is nice. You decided that, okay, maybe something happened in your past, and you pick it up and you make that your identity. It can be limiting. So except you are trying, I'll give you an example. I know a friend who had 3 C-sections, and you cannot catch her in a conversation for more than 10 minutes and you will not know that she had 3 C-sections. And initially, and in some circles, it's it's a thing, but eventually we don't remember her by any other thing except, oh, you've forgotten that one. She said she had 3 C-sections, and it's somehow in some circles it doesn't paint her in a good light. And I don't know why she picked that up. In fact, I don't know that she knows that she has picked it up as an identity. I know a lot of parents to children with autism, cerebral palsy, one issue or the other, and they have picked that up as an identity and made their whole life about it. And when they talk and when they speak, and I know it's possible that this kind of thing can consume you. You can, if you're in a situation, you may not be able to think of another thing but ask yourself, is this my life's purpose? Is there nothing else? Is this what I want to do? And by all means, if you have decided that your mission is through that pain to bring hope and life and succor to everybody in your category, like everybody who has a child, then that identity works for you. But if you're in a corporate workspace and it has nothing to do with what you are doing, we don't all need to be aware. It doesn't help us. Us hearing it doesn't help you. Drop that identity. Pick up an identity that suits you. That's just all I'm saying. There are various things in my life I could choose to pick and make the central theme of my life. But I have chosen to pick being a woman in the executive space, being a woman in leadership. And that's how I identify, because I think it helps me reach out to people like me. I feel that is where this is leading to. And if tomorrow that changes, yes, if tomorrow I feel, okay, this is the pivot I need to make, there are several things that are components of my identity that can serve the area I want it. So we need to be intentional about these things. We need to be conscious about these things. When we enter spaces, when we enter rooms, when discussions are being had, we need to know what we are pushing out as an identity. Someone attended a program and she was supposed to speak and she was tongue-tied, out of tension, and she couldn't speak. And it was a program for 7 days or so. And because it was such an embarrassment, it was big, she couldn't continue and she had to drop the mic. And that was the first day of the program. There is nothing this girl did not do to ensure that she had a second chance in that 7-day program. She talked to people, she did what she could do. By the 3rd day, she had another opportunity. She came, she spoke, she delivered, she was a bit better prepared. She even made a joke about the first day. And guess what? That was not the identity we left that meeting with. After the 7 days, even though we remembered her because we heard her talk. That is intentional. In your career drive, I hope you are intentional about the names you are called with. It's almost like the reputation that remains with you. It's a work in progress. It's something you need to keep working. And now this video is longer than it should be. But I hope you got the understanding of the meat of what we are talking about. All right, have a great time.